your life is on the line and you know that you're on an oxygen tank and they're going to put two in your head, see what you do. Because the bottom line is that me, I'm one person. I can never miss.
Guy's not being loyal to you. How could you be loyal to him?
Yeah.
And whether you're your father or not. So, but it's always been hard because it was my father.
The word came down, this guy had to go. We didn't know nothing about him until the last minute. And I liked him. I liked Billy. He was a nice guy, but...
Welcome to the show. Welcome to this episode of Chattin with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Patty Pasqua. What's up, man? Because once your godfather buys this bar, he's kicking up to your dad, right?
You fucking give him nothing. It was my father's problem. My father used to give away since when he got the money, give it to me. I don't think he got really that much at all from my godfather. And they ran it to the ground, had to close it.
So what happens next? After it's closed.
What happens next is we go to live in Jersey, right? We bought a house in Monmouth County, New Jersey. The house for $11,000, it was a shack, but there was a lot of property there. There was about half an acre. So we were living there. So I'm a baby, I've very vague remembrance. I mean, not until later on. So they wind up fixing the house. My father throws into this $11,000 house. By the time it was finished, he put $286,000 into this house from 66 to 68. The house was fucking unreal. You used to walk in and there'd be a foyer there. Straight ahead, used to walk up 2 stairs. You had a living room, like 15 by 30 with 18-foot ceilings back then.
It was like something you guys never had before. You always were cramped in this apartment, right?
Yeah, we were living before that. We were living on Pleasant Avenue, on 325 Pleasant Avenue. They had a little apartment there.
Basically a tenement, right? Tenement building.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was, a tenement building. And they just kept making money, and they were smart. Even though they spent it, they were making so much money. Because I remember my father telling me he started in 62 again when he came home. By 64, 65, they were millionaires already. All three of them.
And they were still into selling the heroin, right?
That's all they fucking did, man. They were, on Pleasant Avenue. Let me finish what happened. So we get up there, right? My father's building the whole house, right? And in 1971, him and my uncle, my younger uncle, they get a tip that the feds are coming after them.
Yeah.
Because they caught my uncle. My father gave my uncle 990 grams of coke to go meet somebody in 1971. So they go down there, and my uncle's hanging on a Pleasant Avenue, and he's waiting for the guy to come. So a guy shows up in the cab, right? And the guy's driving the cab, and the guy gets out. He goes down into where he goes to meet my uncle. The guy's all wired up. They don't know this shit, It's the fucking DEA back then, and it was the State Investigation Unit in Manhattan. And they had a sting going on. So they had everything. They had money, marked money. They gave it to my uncle. My uncle gives them the package. They walk out. Now they leave. All right? So now they're busted, And my uncle goes, he leaves, he takes off. And like I said, they got a tip, and they took off in February of 71.
Oh, so they're gone. They went on the run.
They're in the wind.
They're like, fuck this. They ain't bringing us.
Yeah, they're in the wind, man. Yeah, nobody wants to go to prison,
No.
I mean, you don't have to catch me. You know, that was my father's attitude. You know, and he was very good at it because they were out. You know, from '71, they took off. They went into New Jersey. You know, they rented a small little place, both of them. You know, and they were doing their thing, watching out. They were very counter surveillance. My father was very, very like that because he was very low key, and my uncle, they were two opposites. My father was low key, and my uncle was a flasher. Not too much, but he would stand out.
So they would kind of
And it,
control each other. They would complement each other with the way they acted, right? Like he's flashy, he's low key,
yeah,
sort of kind of like
my father was 9 years older than my younger uncle, you know.
yeah.
But it was his kid brother, and my uncle was fucking nuts. He was a ballsy fucking guy, man. You know, real fucking. He could get nasty. He could be a nice guy. You know, he's no telling what he could do. So he was getting too crazy for my father. He was hanging out with guys my father didn't like, and he says, my father says, no, I don't like these guys. You know. So my uncle's like, oh, making money with them. He says, Ernie, be fucking smart. You make a couple hours, we got money. You want to get fucking sent back again? So my uncle tells my father, mind your business. Goes, go ahead. Fucking 2 years later, they grabbed him. Yeah, my uncle.
Yeah. So your father's still out, and your uncle gets locked
My
up.
uncle got captured in '73 when he escaped from the place. When he was there 6 months, when he got in West Street downtown, when he got pinched, and they broke out. They bribed the guard for $50,000 and a priest, the chaplain in the jail, the federal lockup, and they busted out. Yeah, he was nuts, my uncle, man. He did not give a fuck. He don't care who you were, you know.
But
And
so your father didn't get busted on that one, did he?
No, my father
No.
was still out. My father was low key, man. He used to drive around a guy with all his money and stature in a '72 yellow Volkswagen Bug. Yeah, because he didn't want to bring no attention to him.
Hey,
You know?
there's different people in the mob. It goes all the way back till now. There's flashy people like John Gotti, and then there's
Yeah.
really low key people, like you said, like what's his name there?
Oh,
The boss of the Genovese
Gigante?
family, Tony
Gigante.
Salerno.
Fat Tony, yeah,
was
Fat
quiet,
Tony.
right?
What?
Was he a flashy guy, Fat Tony?
No, Fat Tony used to sit out. He used to go by the club on 15, and they used to sit outside or inside. He was like from Central Casting, with the brim, with the cigar and the coat and the suits. You know, he used to just sit there. He wasn't flashy at all, you know, but he stood out. You know, because they know him all those years. And then he used to go.
He's the boss of that neighborhood, right?
Yeah. Fat Tony was the boss of that neighborhood from like in the '60s, because before him was Buccalo Ferrer. He was the boss of the neighborhood. He was the capo, and before that was Trigger Michael Pova.
Wow, you know.
So they all, huh? Yeah. Tony took over for Buccalo because Buccalo got pinched in the '60s. So that was Tony. He was the capo there. He was the head, you know? And that was his crew. You know?
So your father, let's get back to your father's situation. Mm-hmm. Your uncle breaks out, and what happens next?
They got out, right? The chaplain got the key, right? And they made an impression in styrofoam. And the chaplain took it out and he took it to a key place. And a couple of days later, the guy gave him the key and he brought it back to them. You know? So it's on a Sunday morning, you know? And there were 7 of them that broke out. you know. And my uncle, they got out and they went to the door, right? And they went to go put the key in the door. The place was so old, the key didn't even work. It fucking wound up snapping.
Oh, the
So
key
my
that
uncle
they
bugged
made, the new key.
the key that they made. That's a $50,000 key, man. So my uncle gets fucking nuts and he reaches over his head and there was like conduit pipes running there. And he grabs one and he just jumps up and he kicks the door with both of his feet and the thing pops open. And they run out of the fucking place. 7 of them. My cousin's waiting like 2 blocks away with a van. You know? And they all jump in the van and they take off. You know? And they had changes of clothes for them and everything, you know?
And this is before cell phones, man. Can you imagine?
So this was in 1974.
Yeah, like, can you imagine how intricate it is to plan this and execute it like flawlessly? Have your ride waiting with clothes and everything. It's insane.
It was planned because my uncle, I told you, he didn't give a shit. You know, he gonna fucking try to go somewhere. You know, he wanted
it took
out.
him 6 months, right? To start the process.
Money talks, bro. Back then, I mean, the articles I sent you seen in it. I mean, they indicted the priest and the guard.
Yeah, I'm gonna put pictures. I'll put pictures into this video of everything.
You know, so that's what happens. He goes, he takes off, my uncle. The other ones, one of them was, you remember the French Connection, the movie?
Yeah.
Okay, you remember the frog, the old man with the hat and the umbrella walking around with the coat?
Yeah.
Him and the chemist. All right, that was the guy that broke out with my uncle from West Street, and he went back to France. And they were looking for him, and the guy, the frog, they called him.
Yeah, that's the real
frog,
guy?
That was his nickname. Huh?
That was the real guy?
The real guy, yeah. He was locked up. They found him, and they locked him up downtown in West Street. You know? In the movie, they show that he disappears. That wasn't the truth. You know? They found him, and they locked him up, and he was awaiting trial. And he took off to France.
He escaped with them, right?
Yeah, they all went out. It was all planned. So my uncle told him, we got to get all this money. Where do you think all that money came from? That was a lot of money to pull.
Where did he plan on going? Where did he go after he escaped?
He went back to France.
Oh, he went to France.
He went back to France after they escaped, you know, because they used to have all kinds of connections. Back in the day, you used to walk into the airport, you didn't even have to show ID or nothing, and just get on the plane. Actually, boarding pass.
Just give them the money. Yeah.
Yeah, cash and everything, you know. No questions asked. So he went back to France, and they were looking for all of them. They found 5 of them in New York. They all arrested them, and then when they went to look for my uncle, they couldn't find him. And then somewhere they heard that in France they killed him, the frog. They found him dead over there. They murdered him.
You don't have no clue.
So the only one that was still at large was my uncle.
Oh, the frog! They killed the frog over there.
They killed the frog. Yeah, and they found him in France, in Marseille. He was dead.
So what happens with your uncle?
You know, I don't know if my uncle was still alive. He was in Miami, hanging out on Flagler Street with all the Cubans. He was fucking nuts, man. You know?
Did he ever get caught?
He got caught in 1977. They caught him coming back. He was just getting on a plane in Miami to come back to New York, because he used to come back, and go run to see his family and everything. And they wound up busting him in Miami. And they grabbed him.
What was the outcome with that?
He wound up getting, eventually he had a 10-year sentence awaiting. So they wind up giving him, I think it was 22 years, because he did 17 on it. and plus they gave him 5 for the escape, you know. And he's locked up now. Now he's in Lewisburg. He's locked up in Lewisburg.
He's still locked up?
Huh? No, my uncle, when they grabbed him, when they recaptured him, they sent him to Lewisburg. He was a class number 5, you know, on the federal chart.
Lewisburg was for the worst of the worst back then.
Yeah, Lewisburg. He was there for 17 years, my uncle.
Atlanta
with Herbie Sperling. You know Herbie Sperling?
Yep.
You ever hear Herbie Sperling?
Yes, I have.
We used to go. Herbie, he was good friends with Herbie. He was in it with him. Him and Matty Madonna. They were all there, you know. And when we used to go on visits, me and my brother used to go up with Herbie Sperling's 2 sons, Guy and Nicky. We used to go up once a month to Lewisburg and go see my uncle and Herbie, you know. And they'd be sending us on excursions, you know. Go through this, go through that, you know. And we used to laugh, you know. Because I said, look at these 2. I said, you got my uncle, who's a fucking nutcase, but I loved him. And you got Herbie, who was worse than him. And Herbie's like 5'5", stocky little motherfucker. He used to smoke we used to be able to smoke in the visiting rooms.
Yeah.
He would smoke in like 3 hours, 2 8-packs, was it, of the little cigars as an Oblies and they had in the vending machines.
Yeah.
And my uncle would smoke like 2 packs of Salems.
I used to smoke the Noblies, man. I still smoke those every now and again.
Yeah, I remember getting them, and back then they were cheap, man. You're talking like we were going, because my father had sent him to Texas in '88. He was in Otisville for years, and he was in Otisville.
When did your father get locked back up, and what was that for?
All right, what happened with my father
how long
was,
did he get, and how long did he?
My father. All right, this is what happened with my father. I hadn't seen my father. Right, when my father left, I was not even 5 years old yet when he took off. So in February '71, so he's out there now, right? He's flying around. They can't find him, you know? And they were coming, the FBI was coming to our house, bothering my mother, you know? And like, my mother's like, I don't know where he is. He abandoned us, you know? And then we left from Jersey, you know, a beautiful house there, sold it to my cousin, and we had a house in Long Beach, Long Island, right on the beach. It was a bungalow that they bought in '65, so we moved there to get away from it, you know, because it was too much just for 3 people. The house, it was huge, you know.
And was your father coming back? Was he sneaking back to see you guys or no?
Well, we waited. I didn't see my father again till like late 1973. And I remember as a kid, I'd go with my mother, and my brother would drive us. And I remember being in the car, and we'd be going around blocks, you know, left here, right here, straight, back around. I'm going, what the fuck? And later on, I asked my brother, I said, what the hell were you doing? We were going to see Daddy. He says, I had to fucking see if anybody was following us. Because my father was right where we lived in Long Beach. He was 15 minutes away in a place called Freeport, Long Island. And he was right under their nose.
Yeah, he's right there. And sometimes I hear that's the best thing to do, is be right under their nose. They don't even know.
He was right there. He was living in a studio apartment in Freeport. And then he had with him, he had his good friend, Donnie Tafaro, which is another, you know, junk pusher. There was like 5 of them on the land hanging out. You know, him and his buddies. You know, they used to get up, and they used to have. There was this restaurant in Freeport. It was called the Villa Rosa. So one day, my father's passing by, looking for somewhere to go to hang out. You know, he winds up going to this Italian restaurant, and he winds up making friends with the owner. And this is like '74, maybe. You know. And that was his hangout place. And they all used to go there and hang out and drink, you know, and laugh and everything, you know, because that's what they used to do pretty much every night, you know, or Golden Campbell, have card games for 3 days, 4 days, you know, stacks of money to be playing in the fucking back in the, where they used to have the party rooms. You know?
Yeah, they have
And I remember
girls walking around, rubbing their shoulders and things,
yeah,
right?
they would close the restaurant. They would close the restaurant down at night when it closed, and they would fucking play cards.
It's like an after
You know?
hours joint.
Yeah, it was an old Italian restaurant called the Villa Rosa. So they were all, and there was like 5 of them, and they were all on the lam. You know, so this is like going on and on and on. They didn't capture my father until 1980, election day, when the day of Reagan got elected, because someone said something, and then my father had moved. He had a girlfriend, you know, and he wound up moving in with her, and went to Long Island. And for some reason, this guy that was a friend of my father, his name was Louis Morrow, right? But he was a real idiot, so they used to call him Louis Moron, you know. And Louis Moron, they used to tell him, he used to call the house, and they used to tell him, do not call the house. You know? He goes, well, I got to get in touch. Well, you come here, don't call. So what happens, they pick up they had his phone tapped, and they pick him up calling. They're like, who the fuck is living here? You know? So they rent the house across the street. This is like in 79. And they shut up, and they're watching, you know? Who's coming in, who's coming out. You know, they were coming all in and out. There was like 5 of them that were on the run, you know, hanging out, having parties and everything. Well, take a long story short, my father's going out, right? So now when they used to leave, my father used to lock up the house, put sticks in between the doors, you know, fucking screws through the window.
Yeah, put like powder.
He was
to
fucking
make
out
sure
of his
no
mind. My
one's
father, he would lock everything down. So one day he puts the stick in between the door. They go out, right? Come back a couple hours later, right? So my father goes and checks everything, because that's the way he was. And then he looks at where they put the stick between the sliding glass door, and the stick's cracked up. And he asks his girlfriend, he goes, Inga, did you move this? She's like, no. He said, somebody fucking came in this house, you know? They came in, bro. They were watching from across the street. They made their entry in. They put bugs in the fucking house.
Oh, man.
They listened to everything, and then they finally found out who he was.
And they're probably like, we got him.
They were like, yeah, they did a thing. I remember with his court transcripts, and I used to read them as a kid. You know, and it was like, he was the longest fugitive out there at that time, running around. He was almost 10 years he was on the lam. And he was on the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives back then. They could not find him.
It's wild, man. Shit, it'd probably be harder to do that type of shit now with all the cameras and everything.
It's unheard of, man. You know? Because
how old are you when he gets arrested in 80? How old are you at that time?
I was 14 years old.
And what did you want to do with your life? Did you have a direction you wanted to go? Did you have
I was a kid, you know, and I was troubled after my father, you know, he wasn't around to begin with, you know. And here I am, a kid, I'm small, and I'm going to see him on the land for a weekend, you know. My mother would drop me off, and sometimes she would come, though we were on vacations. And every time I used to come back, I say, I want my father. Like, I stay with him. You can't. He's working, you know?
Yeah.
So to go without my father, and then from him, because I remember when there was a phone call when he got pinched. And I pick up the phone, and I go, can I help you? He goes, yeah, my name is Ben Gold, and I'm an attorney. And back then, my father was under the alias Joseph Lesotho. That was the ID that he had. You know? And he goes, I'm calling about it, because I remember the name. He goes, Joseph Lesotho, who was arrested. And I'm a kid, you know? So it's, yeah, let me take a message. I take the message, because, you know, he was going for a bail hearing. And, you know, I hang up the phone, and I'm saying to myself, I go, I haven't seen my father in a while. You know, I say that's where he is, because I remember the name, the alias he used to use, one of them. You know, so he went for bail. And back then in 1980, they gave him $1 million cash bail. They didn't want him out.
No.
You know, you go and run like that for years, you know, you're taking off all the time, you know, like, fuck you, come and find me.
Yeah, they're not giving you another chance to slip away.
No. So in the midst, he winds up going to, he went to trial, and he wound up losing. So they gave him 20 years back then. You know?
Damn, man. It's a rough one, bro.
So, I mean, you know, and I remember going to see my father in MCC in Manhattan. We used to go, me and my mother, we used to go for dinner in Manhattan, or Chinatown, or wherever, and then we would go up and go and see him for an hour in MCC. So this was like every week for like a year, a little over a year. Then he got sentenced, and they sent him all the way up to Raybrook to begin it by Lake Placid.
Yeah, Raybrook.
Right after the Olympics, he was there in late 81. They put him up there, and that's where he started his 20-year bid.
So you guys are traveling all the way up there to visit?
We used to go up there in the summertime when he was up there, because you couldn't go up there in the winter. You know, it's snow up there. Forget it. You know, and small little town like Lake Placid. It was right outside of Lake Placid. They actually, where they were housed, the inmates, the federal inmates, is the place that they used for all the Olympians to stay while they were in the country back then. Then they turned it into an FCI Raybrook.
Wow.
So we used to go up there in the summertime, you know, and go jumping in the lake and everything and running around, and we would stay there for the whole weekend. You know?
Were you getting in trouble at this point as a kid? And what was your mindset? Did you want to follow the rules, or were you like?
I actually back there, I mean, I was into sports. You know, I was a hockey player. You know, and I remember I was playing hockey. I mean, we had a crew that I grew up with, but we all played sports. You know.
So you guys really
And
didn't get into a lot of trouble or anything?
No, not till later on. You know, because after the sports stopped, you know, we all started drinking. You know, fucking hanging out, smoking. The next thing you know, everybody's fucking getting high. Who's fucking sniffing coke? You know.
Yeah.
Who's a fucking alcoholic, you know? Because the town I grew up in Long Island, it was synonymous. There was bars everywhere. There was a strip in the west end of Long Beach, and you would go down like maybe 15 blocks, and there'd be a bar on every other corner on both sides of the street.
That's how it is where I'm from, out in Waterbury. Liquor store everywhere, man.
Oh, liquor stores or bars?
No, they're bars, liquor stores. They're on every fucking block out in Waterbury.
Oh yeah.
The next town over, they're everywhere.
But is it who hangs out there? Degenerates or
degenerates?
People?
No, it's all junkies and fucking people.
Oh, that it's like that. See where I came from. I mean, everybody. Tell me who didn't fucking hang out and fucking drink, smoke weed, and do coke back in the fucking 80s.
We all did, man.
Yep, that's what I'm saying. So it was just like us, because everybody used to hang out. You know, we used to start at one end, right? Where we used to hang out on New York Avenue. That was our avenue. We were the New York Avenue boys. So we used to hit every bar and walk our way down and hit every bar in every other corner, hang out, and then come back and do the same thing.
Is there any situations during that time in your life that stand out in your mind? Like you're out there hanging out and something happens and you witness it, or you heard of something. Is there anything you can explain to me?
Nah, my friends and everything, we used to like to fight. Well, so we had a big crew, man. We had about 20 of us. So, you know, people would come into town and they think who the fuck they are, you know? And
they come there and think they're running shit. They're like, oh,
exactly.
Whose place
so
is this?
We had like, yeah. It was laughing. We used to have two guys that'd be like, you know, go over there and, you know, start talking to them, you know? And yeah, you're right, all right. And then somebody would say something to her, like, well, what do you think, you're a fucking tough guy now? You know? So next thing you know, there'd be a fucking fight. You know?
There's a lot of that in the neighborhood, right?
Forget it, man. For where I came from, man, that's it. It's down, you know, we're going, you know? And back then, everybody fought, who fought with fists. Maybe somebody had a little pocket knife, but that's about it. So it was hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah,
Kick in a fucking
they weren't
punch.
really getting into the weapons and the guns and things.
Not till later.
When you're a teenager, do you notice mob hits going on in the neighborhood, or do you hear about things that are going on, people getting pinched and things like that?
Oh, of course, of course. I was hanging out. I started hanging out back on Pleasant Avenue. I went back there in 1985, and I hung out for over 15 years on the Avenue. You know, pretty much every day. Of course, you heard like, oh, this guy got pinched. You know, he's facing 40 years. You know, you gotta watch out. The cops are in the neighborhood because the feds used to come in yellow cabs. You know, and they would run up and down, and you would know, you know, because Pleasant Avenue is a small avenue. It's from 114th Street, right by Rayo's and Jefferson Park. It's only 6 blocks to 120th Street, and on the other side of that, you got Wagner Housing Projects. So it's only a 6-block area, and everybody knew what cars were on that street, what time of day, and everything, because you have lookouts all over the place.
So
And
have you
somebody
ever
wasn't there,
seen
they
that
signal.
type of thing? Have you ever seen that type of stuff where a cop comes in and they know he's a cop and they call him out on
Of
it?
course. Of course. They know what's going on. You know, it's a bad car in the neighborhood. You know, whatever has happened, it just stopped. You know,
Yeah.
everything would just shut down. You know,
They think sometimes, I think the government, they think they're slick with it. Like, oh, we're going to send this fresh faced person in there. Like they don't know
No.
what's going on. Come on.
No,
There's a
that-
fresh person on the block. Where the fuck's he from? Right?
I mean, later on, they did that. Like when they busted, like my father was gone already in '71. Like in the Pleasant Avenue connection, those were his friends that they kept hanging out there, and eventually they found their way into the neighborhood, the state, and the feds. It was a combined thing, and they rented apartments up in the friggin' top over there, and they had surveillance going on, and they wound up grabbing these guys in 74, the Pleasant Avenue connection, my father's friends. And they all got sentences, you know. And then after they went away, the shit kept still happening over there. Somebody else. That's when the purple gang takes over. You know?
How
In the
many people are in the purple gang at that time?
Originally,
Estimated.
it was about 35 original members.
Now, are they made
about-
members? Are they like the purple gang? Is that like a faction of the mob?
They were like a farm team.
So it's kind of like
Of
the
the mob.
Bath Avenue crew.
Yeah, exactly. But now you're talking, when they were around the purple gang, they started forming in early 70s. The original purple gang, the East Harlem purple gang, which you had all old timers in there. You had Angelo Prisco. You heard Angelo Prisco?
No, I've heard the name.
Genovese captain. He's dead now. You had Angelo Prisco, Danny the Lion Leo, Matty Madonna. Who else was there? Donnie DeFlaro, my father's friend. There was a whole bunch of them. Frank Becerro Jr., Michael Meldish, Joey Meldish. You know, and these guys were fucking serious dudes, man. They did not fuck around.
I've heard quite a bit about Michael Meldish. I heard he was a straight killer.
Michael Meldish was like a pimple on Joey's ass. Michael Meldish, they say, killed about 12 people. Joey killed close to 50 people that they know of. You know?
And you've been around Michael Meldish before and his brother?
No, Michael Meldish I never met. Joey, I know. You know,
So,
and Joey was a.
do you want to tell that story about when your father was on parole?
All right,
the
which
letter.
one now?
With the letter.
Oh, with the letter. And I got two of them for you, and you're gonna fucking laugh. And these are true stories, right? My father comes home, right? So now, this is a crazy fucking thing. Right before my father comes home, right? My brother was doing something in Vegas, you know, kind of fraud deal with licenses and shit. They wind up getting pinched, right? This was in '87. They left my brother out there until 11 days before the statute of limitations in 1992. And this is like maybe 6 months before my father's coming home, and they pinched my brother. They lock him up, no bail. He's in there like 2 months, and finally they let him out his own recognizance. So he winds up getting 5 years federal parole back in '93. So check this out. I take them. Him and my father got the same fucking parole officer. Blind, Mrs. Kelly. She was beautiful, and she had just came into it. She's been there maybe a year. You know. So the first time we go visit, right? And we were going. He had to go, once a month and everything. Both of them. So one day I go in there, right? And my brother used to go in first. Then he would come out, and then my father would go in. So I walk in there, right? My brother walks in. I'm going to park the car. So I'm parked like a little down low where I'm out of the way. All of a sudden, I see this car shooting towards us. And I'm like, who the fuck is this? Because we're parked where nobody is. Car pulls up right next to us. And I'm looking, and the window comes down, and he goes, hey, Patty, what's up? Pontiac. And I'm looking at this guy. This guy looks fucking familiar. My father goes, Sonny, what's doing, man? How you been? With Sonny Franzese and his son John Jr. Because they were friends. They knew each other, And
Yeah.
here you got the underboss of the Colombo crime family coming to see my father in the parole. So my father goes, Sonny, they're going to fucking catch us. He goes, fuck them,
Well, they have to go to the same office anyway. What the fuck are they gonna do?
Yeah, but I've seen when I was in there that guys that were consorting, because there'd be cameras everywhere in there, and all of a sudden you hear over the camera, you too, so and so, John Doe and Frankie Frank, get on the other side of the room.
Wow.
And that's 30 years ago.
So that's
but it was fucking funny.
You're not supposed to have contact with other criminals once you're convicted of a crime and you're on federal
unless it's your
parole.
family, your immediate family.
Yeah, like your brother and your father.
Like my father and my brother, they can't tell them you can't hang around, with each other. And my father and his brother, when they came, you can't tell them they can't hang. They're brothers,
Yeah.
So the other thing that was an earlier one, and that was fucking funny then. And I go, Dad, who was that? He goes, that was Sonny Franzese. That's this guy. I says, he looked familiar, and he was doing sit downs in his car with the son. And the son was wired up. The son ratted him out, testified against him.
Yeah, that was John, the one that was on drugs.
John,
right?
Yeah, John Jr. Yeah, he testified against him. So that was fucking funny. And then the time when he was corresponding with Maddie the Horse Iannello, because he was with Maddie for like 4 years in Texas, and he was writing them letters, and he used to put them on the bureau, the dresser. And it would be a face up, and he always used to leave them there. And I used to tell him, yo, put that in the drawer, Dad. You never know when your PO is going to come around. I'm going to send it out. We're going out in a little while. He had the stamp on it and everything.
He said, she just came, right? She just
fucking came. I was laughing there. Like, bang, I go in, answer the door. I go, oh, God. And I'm going to my father like this behind the door. I'm pointing, and he ain't getting what I'm getting. She walks in. She goes, because she had the right to come in there.
Yeah.
And she comes in, and she's looking at that, and I went by it, like to get something, and I turned the envelope upside down, so you couldn't see the name. So she's like, "Could I get in the drawer there?" I said, "Go ahead, be my guest." She looks around, and she sees the letter there, like it's upside. She turns it around, and she sees who it's addressed to. Matthew Iannello. She's like, "Are you out of your fucking mind?" He's an arch criminal, and so are you. You guys can't consort.
How was your father? Was he like playing stupid? Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
No, my father told her, because that's my friend. I know this guy fucking 30 years, you know? No more than that. Because you guys can't consort, you know? He's a felon, you're a felon, you're not family. So they were going to violate him. She took the letter, and you know what the funny thing was, Staxx? My father, he liked her because she was good looking. And I remember he was writing a letter. He goes, should I tell Maddie that I want to bang my parole officer? I go, no, leave it out just in case. And when he got pinched, when this shit happened, he turned around and said to me, he goes, son, that was the best advice you ever gave me.